Y'all good for recording?
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good
Morning.
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 All right. So let me start. I'm going to start with chapter 1, and then you guys please feel free to chime in with your thoughts. So chapter 1 talks about like initial meeting, that first week of school that we've all experienced this year, where like the teachers get to meet each other. You get to meet like the school building. Well, for me, it was the first time. So the school, then to know like the principal. So it's talking about like it's important to get to know one another personally before discussing like room setup, material storage, lesson plans. Um, and also, I don't know about your schools, but my school did offer like structured activities to help co-teachers to get to know each other, team building activities like jokes or even like that Kahoot um games that you can play. It also talks about like important of like getting to know each other outside of the school, like planning like an outside gathering, whether it's like mini golf, lunch, or coffee, just to ensure some common ground to work from when students enter the classroom. And then it keeps on going like with suggestions, 20 questions for co-teachers that prompts like you can answer, like I wish I was better at, what is your favorite text tool in the classroom, and like how to continue to do team building throughout the school year. um and then the book provides you with like tables of like team building activity checklists and like questions for co-teachers that you can rely on for the future. um and then day 2 talks about like teaching teams, and that you should share some core values about learners, teaching, and the school community, and how you and your partner should craft a vision statement that communicates shared intentions, about using a classroom visual as a tool for collaboration, communication, and transformation. Vision can create a sense of purpose, inspire big thinking. And lately, they've been very big on vision. I don't know about your school, but like my administration, they go and they walk around and then like look in the classrooms to see if the vision is on the wall. And then what do we include? What do we want for ourselves? What is the purpose of teaching? How do students learn best? What does the ideal classroom lesson look like? Be aware of behaviors that can sabotage your efforts, failing to dream beyond your circumstances, focusing on what you want to avoid versus focusing on what you want to have or achieve. And then it talks about like creating on a chart or a PowerPoint, to answer some of the following questions. What are the students doing? How do educators feel? What can you hear in the classroom? And what are the members of support staff doing? Um, so I really like those questions, especially because I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like administration in a school like makes a big difference. So if you feel comfortable like talking to administration if there's a problem, or something, or if they have like set like important expectations of the teachers, that's good, or like set expectations for collaboration, that's also really good, because then it like starts the ground for having like effective communication. And of course we all know that collaboration is really one of the toughest things that we do in teaching. And especially when you walk in a classroom like a sped teacher, and you walk into the gen ed, and then they've been teaching for 20 plus years, and you walk in there, they're like not very open to your suggestions. um that has happened to me. So I mean, sometimes I feel like I should share these notes with like my whole team, like, hey, look, this is what collaboration should look like. um but yeah, any thoughts from you guys on these subjects? No?
Nope, you did a good job summarizing the
All
big
right.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way that they described in chapter 1 about like it's like speed dating. I feel like it is like when you go into the school, it's always like you're on nerve because you don't know how it's going to be, like that relationship that you're going to have. I like how they mentioned that on that. And then the way to think about like doing the 20 questions.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of like, I remember that week of PDs that we had. Like, my two co-teachers were like new to this, like this is their first year teaching. So it was like definitely doing a lot of like those like team building because you're like, we're gonna be here for the next year, so like let's get to know each other whether we like it or not, you know.
We're stuck.
Mhm.
All right.
And then I also wanted to mention that I like how it says, like, the way they mentioned for day 2, it was if you don't have a vision, there's no clarity or inspiration. And it is kind of true, because if you don't know what your long-term goal is going to be, then like how are you even, you're setting these like mini goals, but then there's no inspiration to continue. Like it's just basic, you could say.
Yeah. Very true.
Should we go on with day 3 and 4?
Let's do it.
I'm gonna give a little the SparkNotes version of 3 and 4 real quick. So day 3 is set goals. I think just as like, you know, as special ed teachers and kind of collaborating with like our gen ed teachers, we kind of have to, you know, going from the vision in day 2 to creating these goals, whether it's an individual goal, but also creating those like co-teaching goals. You know, like as teachers, we want to be like, oh, we have to make sure our students are meeting X, Y, and Z criteria, you know, so we can see that they're progressing, but also like I feel like the book makes a good thing that you also want to set goals as co-teachers because you know there are different ways to co-teach, you know, like well, I believe it was like 6 different ways you could co-teach. Or am I making that number up? Yeah. So you know how we're gonna like co-teach as like, you know, the gen ed teacher take in and then the special ed teacher like chime in, or do we do small groups? As well as like, you know, are they gonna plan like cohesively everything together or plan individually for like the special ed teachers like caseload? So just kind of setting everybody up for success with like goal setting. And then day 4 is essentially introducing the news to like your students, but mostly to the teacher. So, you know, creating that like welcome letter and kind of setting that those norms that, you know, there are gonna be 2 teachers and it's not like the gen ed teacher's power is like here, and then us as the sped teacher we're like here. No, like it's an even playing ground, you know. There's also like you know, creating like the website to kind of keep up to date with like what's going on. As well as like, you know, when it comes to like connecting with students, I feel like the book makes a really good example of like there's this stigma that as a special ed teacher we're just there to support our special needs, our students that you know have specific learning disability or whatever their disability is within 13 IDA. That, you know, we're also there to help support the gen ed students as well. And then how do we like connect to the curriculum, which is a big one. But yeah, that was kind of like the main 4 things. I mean, the main 3 things from day 3 and 4. It's kind of like, you know, 1 and 2 was building the framework, and now 2 and 3 is like, all right, let's pull the drywall up. I know you use this like whole simile of like, I don't even know if that's a simile, but the whole thing of like building a house.
Okay. Okay.
But
Okay.
any comments, concerns?
So setting the good foundation. Yes.
I
Yeah.
definitely did like the for the goals, day 3, where they did talk about, and that's something I think we never really consider, and it's applying the co-teaching, like you said. One of the models, doing it like every week, so that way I feel like you find your groove, you see which one works for you. And instead of just assuming this is going to be the role, because I feel like, as you know, in our roles now, we kind of come into being just the assist, you know, there's one teaching and then we're assisting. And it's like, how effective is that? And it would be nice to be like, hey, you know, maybe we should try something different. And then the day 4, I liked how they were talking about with the students getting their feedback. And like, those are things that you don't even consider, like, oh, we should tell our kids, like, you know, this is what we're going to be doing. This is how we're going to be doing it. And getting the feedback from them and saying, hey, like, what do you guys think about the way we're doing this? Do you like this? Like, what are the benefits that you see from this? And then creating, I like that. Like, Wendy, you were talking about, like, you know how you said one teacher could have been teaching for like 2 years and the other. I like the way they said do a Venn diagram, so that way students, not only are we getting to know them, but they're getting to know us. And then you're doing that Venn diagram to talk about, like, so-and-so, she's been teaching this long, this is her family, this. And then this teacher, the same thing. And look at, this is how they connect. And I think that's really good, because we say that we want to get to know students, but how are the students really getting to know us? So I like that.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
like, also it's like in the beginning, like we don't really know the students, right? And like into like month 2, then you're like, oh, these kids need this, you know?
Yeah.
So then like I guess that actually can shift also during the school year. And that's okay, right? Because that's like how it goes for everything in teaching, even for our lessons. Like we plan, oh, we're gonna teach this lesson in 2 days, and yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. And that's fine, you know, you gotta be flexible, and it's fine, just take it day by day, you know. The one thing that I feel like complaining, I just like, that really triggers me, like especially in front of the kids. Like know when you're gonna complain, like go to your car, you know, and scream and complain there. But like those are other things, like I feel like in the beginning you should set like as a vision and as like a coach.
Your goal.
Yeah, that, because then you're like, okay, so how are we gonna deal with this? How are we gonna deal with our stress when we need a minute? What's gonna be our our
Like giving
little...
a sign to each other, like,
yeah, like I need a minute, you know?
Safe word. Here's my safe word. Yeah. Yes.
And it makes such a big difference, like to have a, like, you know, a good team that you want to go to work and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to work, but then you know, unfortunately it's not always the case. And I hear like this year one of the sped teachers quit mid-year, and it was sad. It was sad for the students, you know, more than for the teachers, that they can't like put aside their personal issues and just work for the students, you know. It's sad, but you know, happens.
Okay, we good? Oh, okay.
I did want to share with day 4 what I liked about it, and it had me reflecting on when I first began was called the school year, where it says share the news. So with my mentor, I know that we're a team, but when we step outside of our classroom, does everyone else know that we're a team, that we're equals? And I like the idea about sending out the welcome or the introduction letters to the parents and families, or even the staff members, to say, hey, this is us, this is what we do, we're a team. And I really like that, because when I first started, we sent out separate ones. And looking at this, I'm like, had we read this, maybe I would have suggested we sent out one together.
Definitely. I think like, I don't know, like I remember like part of the residency, I know they made us like, I don't know if you guys like send out like that like welcome letter home. Yeah, like I know like what we did is like my mentor created like the template, and then he's like, all right, add you guys' information and like make it like me and my co-residents. So it's like a very cohesive, kind of like that example that the book gave.
Yeah.
And I think what they don't realize though is like, yeah, we're with our mentors, and yeah, we have that opportunity, like our students will know, but like Tiffany says, like out of that classroom. So if we go in for inclusion, those kids don't know, those parents don't know. And so then it's bringing up that whole thing about, oh, you're just the other teacher. And it's like, well, like, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So we could go for day 5 and 6?
Yes.
Okay. So day 5, I unfortunately do not know how to take short notes. So day 5 is time to make time. And that one is like when you're going to meet with somebody, with your group, your team, you have to think about what are the needs that you're wanting to come out of that. So you always have to make sure that you're asking questions that can help. You're finding, especially the time, to meet with each other, and they're like, oh, 60 minutes each week is like an ideal thing. You have to plan for planning, plan to pay. So I know at our school they do like compensation for if you're meeting out of work hours, but then there's not always funds for that. And then it's talking about like eliminating duties throughout the school for some of the resources so that they can provide that opportunity. But then it's like, it's kind of, I have to think about this positively, because I know like these are ideal things to be done, but it's not possible.
Yeah.
Like, the plan B, you're asking for independence, like doing it on your own, creating this, being there before or after school, doing this during lunch, possibly with your partner, volunteering somebody within the school to cover that time, traveling with the team, which is like putting two classes together, doing community building activities with those classes while you're trying to meet with each other, during specials, which is like, how do you even do that during specials times? You can't have a teacher be like, hey, instead of having my kids for essentials this day, can you take them like, that just doesn't work. Having the staff being shuffled around, lesson plans, walking and talking. I think that's what we do a lot of, like walking and talking. How much do you really get covered at that time? Doing 10 minutes at a time, like giving you alternate ways of thinking that you can bring in sometime. But I think that's kind of hard considering like how schedules are run, especially when you're in different grade levels. And then day 6, plan to plan. It's ideal to have, it's like thinking about the environment and then the right tools. Making sure like when you're doing your tools that you're meeting guidelines, that you have an agenda, you have roll cards, you put do not disturb signs out on your door. And at my school, that doesn't work. Chart paper and markers, and then having a timer, and then food, which I think is like a positive, because when you're eating, like, I feel like if you're eating and you're doing something, like you're enjoying yourself and it doesn't feel like it's dragging. So that's what I got from day 5 and 6.
Nice.
It's a lot. I was like, I mean, to me, it's like, and I was telling Josue, I was like, you have to be positive and think of this in a positive way, but like in a school setting, it's not ideal because schedules are all over the place, and everybody, especially if you're not teaching one grade and you're all in different grades, everybody has different times, and it's not easy for me to go to the administrator and say, hey, like, can you pull so-and-so from recess so they can come and cover my room so I can go talk to whoever? Like, it's not feasible within school, the way that it's structured.
Yeah.
I think also with like, I know the book mentioned about like, oh, if you need like planning time, probably like find like backup or somebody to cover you. But it's like, I think it's hard nowadays with like, being in the school system that like, they're super low staff too,
Yeah.
Even in a high school setting, it's like you have like kind of going back to Susie's, like everybody has different time frames. But then it's like, how do you make it work? Especially with like, like let's say my prepping period's 3rd period, but this teacher's 2nd. But then you also have department X, Y, and Z. And then it's like, oh, well, I'm in department. So it's like, where do we meet this happy ground? But then, you try not to take work outside of school. And then administration's like a pain in the butt to try to give you those extra hours. And then it's like, as a sped teacher, we're like, oh, we got IEP to write. And it just becomes like a whole like, and
I get it's ideal. It's ideal to plan. And I think in a perfect world, including the way it's said, like our support staff as well, like our SICAs being included in these meetings, because I feel like they're a big part of what's going on with certain students. And I feel like ideally it would be perfect for everybody to be involved, but it's just hard to find that time.
We just want a world with bunnies and unicorns.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. When I read day 5 and I was looking at plan A, and then I continued to plan B where it asks wishful thinking, I was like, yeah, that is wishful thinking. Because it's hard to plan. The plan B, what I what I liked was some of the ideas was asking for independence, like from the students. So having them doing independent work, and ideally that's time for us to plan. They're all like good ideas, but it's hard. But I do think it's important, even if it is the walk and talk, let's plan to meet in this hallway and walk and talk as we go to lunch or something like that.
Is that more feasible, like for you, Josue, in high school, in a high school setting?
What do you mean, like the planning and talking, or
Yeah, like the independent, like them doing independent work and you actually planning?
It just depends on like what's being taught. But I think like what a lot of teachers do is that like if they can't find the time, they'll create like a Google Doc and just kind of write, and then you put their why, and then if they have to touch base, they're like, all right, hey, can you have like a quick like 5-10 minute touch base just to make sure they're on the same page? Or if they're like in the classroom and the students are working on something, then it's like a quick little like huddle, like, you know, a good little quickie. So yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of my fourth graders, like, yeah, no.
It does depend on the grade, I feel.
Yeah, and the DL students, like, if you're not on top of them, they're just not gonna do anything. Period.
That is true. That is true.
Zero.
Before we move on, I just want to say we have about 10 minutes and we're still on the first question.
Uh-oh.
Yes, but it's good.
But you know what though? I think I feel like we've kind of hit
all the connections, and we're just gonna put them right in there. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, we're gonna write them in there. Don't worry about it.
All right. So I got my notes in. Day 7 and 8. Collectively, I think the big idea was centered around kind of about once we plan the meeting, creating a meeting that is meaningful, and that we maximize the time that we're in that meeting. What is it called? Day 6, it really talked about like making these meetings with the co-teacher or any educator for that matter, meaningful. And it kind of touches on like day 6, where in day 6, when we think about planning, having an agenda and delegating roles, we kind of are doing that in the meeting when we're making, the time remaining on the Zoom. But we need to make it meaningful, and to make it meaningful, we delegate roles. So we have a recorder. We kind of check in these meetings to like review the agenda, share good news, kind of have it structured in a way, set appropriate times for each item agenda, touching on topics, and we got to stay focused and just keep it moving. Another way to keep it meaningful is just wrap it up. When you start the meeting, keep it positive, and when you end the meeting, keep it positive as well. So that was kind of day 7, and day 8 continued on to talk about taking note. So creating an agenda where it can be evaluated, put a time limit for each time agenda and determine who will do what, and set timelines for what will be covered in this agenda. That was like the big idea for day 7 and 8.
All right. Thank you.
I think like we could all kind of like, I feel like day 9 and 10 are very like, I don't want to say it's a repetition of like what we've read as a whole, but I think it's just kind of like setting up those norms that we should be setting up in the beginning of the school year, and as well as kind of making sure that like, you know, that we're seeing each other as equals. Then kind of like what day 10 explains.
Yeah, what I took from chapter 8 was like the note taking, and I'm like horrible. Like, no, let me say this: I'm very good at summarizing. I'm just horrible at keeping an agenda. Like, I'm very horrible at that. I admit it. Like, I see like teachers, especially Vero, she's not here, but if you look at her agenda, it's like insane. She even has like little stickers that she like personalizes for her agenda. I'm not kidding. And like she puts like the little stickers on like everything she needs to do. And I'm like, I need to become like that person, but I don't know if I have the time. Like it says, make time to make time. Well, I don't know if I have the time for that, but I would love to be that person. Like as I was reading here, it says like all the things that you should put on your agenda, like timing. I think that would be perfect because like I'm horrible at like timing, as you could see. Like I could talk forever. And then action required and all that. Yeah. That's what I liked about chapter 8. And then it talks about like the important stuff and like the movie quotes. And I mean, I love movies, so like incorporating music in the classroom.
Yeah.
I think those are good ideas.
Yeah.
No, I think definitely like these like what 10 days, well, 2 weeks, I guess, 2 week span. I think it's just definitely really creating that like foundation and very making it like, okay, this is what needs to happen before we get to the, to the home run. Like,
Yes.
making the sports reference.
I know Josue jumped into like day 9 and 10, but I also want to say like for day 9, I like the 7 norms that I think it's like, meeting the expectations. Yes. So we have with kids, we tell them, here are our expectations in the classroom. And I feel like those should be expectations when you set up a meeting, be like, okay, here are our norms. Here's this. We brief every Wednesday for special ed. And like every meeting, it starts off with norms. And it's like, well, those are really good things to do because sometimes we kind of forget. Like, yeah, like we're just going along. And then for day 10, making sure like everyone operates as equals. I think one of my biggest, like my proudest moments was one of my math students, not a special ed student, my gen ed student. He saw my ID and he was like questioning like, oh, hey, that's a nice picture. And we were going on and he's like, how long have you been here? And I was like, well, this is my first year. And he's like, what do you mean? He goes, you guys like work so well together. And it just like made me feel awesome. Cause I even told my mentor, I was like, that just goes to show like the students don't see one teacher as being the teacher. Like he literally like goes to anybody that's available. And in that classroom, it flows like that. And it was like the nicest feeling. Cause I'm like, yeah, like that shows that it's not an awkward, I come in and assist and he comes in and assists. Like, we all just co-teach equally.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah.
When you have that environment.
Let's see.
I thought about chapter 9 and then the norms. And I thought about, just like you said, Susie, the norms for us in our IEP meetings. We always have norms and there's always an agenda and we always have roles. And this whole chapter kind of had me think about those things and the norms. And I do think it would be important to incorporate the norms into our co-teaching aspect.
Oh my God.
Yes.
If not, it'll be like a whole like a hot mess. We'll be like running with chickens.
Yeah.
Yes. I like when it said like pursuing a balance between advocacy and inquiry. And so it says, means simply that each collaborative partner should demonstrate a willingness to get and give input, to listen and to act. I really like that. That out of like the whole chapter, that sentence really caught my attention.
But I just want to go on to that because I think that is super important because I feel like as adults, it's easier for us to give than for us to receive. And I'm saying in general because, you can't generalize just specific people, but it happens, people are so quick to be like, well, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. But then it's like, hey, but then you feel like you can't say that because that person won't take it the same way.
Oh, absolutely. Especially this year. But I hope that next year is going to be different.
Yeah.
Something very simple. Like I went ahead. I don't know why I did that, but I did a field trip for my kids. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, filling all those forms and it's a lot. This is the first time, for me. So it was like a learning moment. But okay, so everything's set, like every teacher needs to go. And then last minute, one of the teachers said, well, because it was a trip to ComEd. So she's like, well, I'm not going to go with my students. I think the science teacher should go because I'm not teaching science. I was like, okay. I was like, I could go, like, whatever, you know, like, so she didn't go. So then the science teacher went and took the kids and I was like, well, I mean, if you were,
isn't that her, like, the field trip was a class, wasn't it? As a class, like, why? Okay. But it goes back to the whole advocacy and inquiry. Yeah.
It just made that connection. I was like, it was really a 90-minute field trip. It was right here, like 10 minutes in Bridgeport, the ComEd that's right there. Like, it was a fun trip. Like, the teacher I went, she was like, I loved it. And I was like, oh my God, it just talks about, like, you know, just be that team member, like, you know, support each other. Like,
well,
okay. We only have 1 minute and 20. And I know we also have to talk about words that we
yes. So I wrote mine in already in the notes. It was augmentative communication.
Okay. For me, it was awestruck. I was like, I heard that word, but I never know what it is. And I was like, oh, it's just to be filled with awe.
Yeah, I wrote that down. So
I had one of them and I like highlighted. There was policies as intractable. And I was like, what the heck is intractable? And then I was just looking it up and it's hard to control with. So like kind of what we're talking about, things that are out of our control.
Okay, I'm gonna write it down in there. Intractable.
Intractable. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully I spelled it right. Okay.
Want mine's was parity signals. And that
wait, can you repeat
those are
that?
visuals. Parity signals. I can copy and paste because I took the note. I'll put it on here. Yeah, but they're visual, verbal, and instructional signs designed to convey equality.
Oh,